Well, good morning. Good to see you guys. Happy New Year. My name is David Black. If we've not met, I'm the campus pastor here at the Grace Church campus, and we're just glad that you would be here with us this morning. If you are new with us, if you're a guest, something that we like to say often, and we mean it, is that when you look at what it means to follow Jesus, something that you find is true, is that it is always costly. It's always costly. Whenever you open the Bible and look, you're always walking through or struggling with something that God is calling you from as he calls you to himself. But also, it doesn't have to be lonely. In fact, equally, as much as when you open the Bible and see that it's costly, when you open the Bible, you see that followers of Jesus have always lived in community. And so here's what that means. If you are a follower of Jesus, it's our hope and prayer that God speaks to you today, not just from his word, but also through his people. And so we're glad you're here. If you're not a follower of Jesus, that's okay. We're actually glad you're here as well. And we understand that what you're maybe navigating or just checking out Jesus doesn't happen in a vacuum. And maybe we could be a community of people in which to travel with and ask those questions. And so whether you are a follower of Jesus or not, I'm just glad that we're kicking this off for 2023. This is a part of the gathering where we open up God's heart. That's this. And so if you have your Bibles, you can go ahead and get them out. If not, it'll be on the screen. And we're going to start this morning by kicking off a brand new sermon series entitled, What Are We Known For? And so I don't know, I'm not going to make you raise your hand, but chances are if you have lived for any amount of time, the new year starts for many of us off with a lot of questions. For some of us, it's a question of like, hey, what was that in 2022, right? Like, oh my goodness, what was that? For some of us, it's like, well, how do I not do that again, right? All of that. Or maybe for you, it's like, what do I need to change or what do I need to add? Well, one of the questions that we thought it'd be just great to start off together as followers of Jesus for the new year is just ask this question. What are we known for? What are we known for? I wonder if you were to answer that question for yourself or for your family, what would it be? My family, some of you know, my immediate family that I grew up in are from Jersey. And so I grew up, so don't hold that against me, number one, right? Number two, I grew up with all my extended family in Jersey. So we'd go visit Jersey. My dad still has he carries that accent with him. If you haven't noticed or not, he has that. I don't know. I didn't get it. I don't think my sister's got something else going on. But for us, like I didn't get that because I didn't grow up in it. But one of the things that people in Jersey can be known for, okay, I'm not trying to stare this to everybody. One of those things is that growing up, it was not really quiet at my house. Like, we are not a quiet people. That's not who we are, right? We're just loud, we just talk. And so my family was just that way. And when Lauren got married to me, her family was not that way, okay? And so she came into my family, and we kind of merged that way. And I'll never forget, she walked up to me and she goes, why is everyone arguing? And I was like, what do you mean? Nobody's arguing. We're just what? Anybody know? We're just talking. That's right. Yeah, thank you. We're just talking. What do you mean? We're talking. And we're never lack for opinionated people. That's what we are. Right? We have an opinion. We will always have an opinion, and that's just how it works because that's what we're known for, right? That's what we're known for. It's interesting. It's an interesting question if you think about it because what you're known for has a lot to say about vision, has a lot to say about direction, has a lot to say about trajectory, and maybe even what you're passionate about, what you care about, where you're from, where you're headed. It's a lot wrapped up in that one question. And what's interesting is that the question in of itself, what are we known for, doesn't include, by the way, what do you want to be known for, right? Because that's a different question for 2023. Some of us would say, that's the question we're asking. What do I want to be known for? I want to be known for low calories in 2023. I want to be known for patience in 2023. I want to be known for no social media or less social media in 2020. That's the one we tend to answer. But the question, what are you known for, is a little bit more revealing because we realize that those things are not always the same thing. And so today we're just going to start this introduction and kind of get us thinking a little bit that way. I brought a couple pictures of some companies that are known for some things. So for example, this first company here, is anyone probably familiar with it if you use Scotch tape or if you wrapped anything this Christmas? 3M, okay? What are they known for? This is audience participation. Tape, sticky stuff, Post-it notes, that's right. Does anyone know what they started off as? Mining, yes, man, gold star for you. Gail, I think that's you, great. They were a mining company, a mineral company. And now we're like wrapping presents with all that. Here's another one. What about this one? Nokia. Now, for those of you who are younger, Nokia was a really old what? Cell phone, telecommunications company, right? Does anyone remember, anyone know what they started off as? Something completely separate. What's that? Cameras? Nope, not at all. Not at all. Books. Books. Yeah, it's crazy. Isn't that nuts? Here's another one. What about this one? Avon. Perfume, right. Yeah. Anyone know what they started selling? Door to door. Magazines. Yeah, they used to give out the pure perfume for free, and it started being more popular than the magazines, so they pivoted. Isn't that crazy? Here's another one. Nintendo. Known for, oh man, yeah. A few minutes of silence at my house, if you know what I mean. So I know, that's what are they known for? What did they start as? Anybody know? Playing cards, exactly. Yep, it's great. What about this one? One more. Gap, known for overpriced clothing. No, clothing, right? Clothing. Does anyone know what they started as? No. That's a great guess. That's good. It's good. They started. There's no recovery from that, Larry. Thanks. It's my father-in-law, everybody. They started as a record store. Isn't that crazy? All of these people put all of this time. I just imagine 3M coming up with a mission statement. 1,000 years from now, we're going to be known for the best minerals and mining ever known. Nope, different story. The guy's like, I want to create the most awesome record store called The Gap. And forever, people will know us because of records. Newsflash, nope, right? Because just because you want to be known for something, and just because you spend a lot of energy headed that way, and just because you put a lot of investment into it, and just because you make a mission statement, and just because you make a financial portfolio and a business plan, and you do all this, just because you desire to do that does not mean what? That in 1,000 years, 100 years, 5 years from now, that's what you will be known for. Somewhere along the line, every one of these companies started differently than something they ended up being known for. Let me ask you, I got one more for you right here. What do you think of when you think about this? Church. Now for some of you, don't say this out loud, right? Okay? Like some of you, just think it in your head, right? There's a lot. If we just took a poll, I guarantee you, some of us would say some words that were pretty emotionally loaded. Others of us would probably say some words that we may not want to say in church, right? Others of us might say good things, great things, depending on what your experience and how you grew up, right? There's a whole host of things that you could say that would come to mind, especially in today's days and age, when you think about what is a church known for. Now, can I make it a little bit more personal and uncomfortable, right? Like a little bit more uncomfortable for us? What about this one right here? Ooh, what about us? Now, I know what we want to be known for, right? But if we just ask the question, what are we known for? What would we say? We could probably look through the scriptures and find a bunch of different Bible verses that we would point to. Many of you might have good biblical answers. And again, we could just poll our neighbors and they might say something completely different than what we would want to say. But for us in 2023, I thought it just might be great. What would it look like for us to start actually with the words of Jesus and ask him and say, Jesus, what would you want your church to be known for? Jesus, would you tell us in your words, what are we known for? What are we known for? So today we're going to just do the intro. We're going to start a series in which we are walking through some of the most famous lines that Jesus has said. Now, again, you could probably search the Bible and come up with a lot of different answers to this question, but I think the one that we're starting off with would classify as a passage of Scripture that Jesus and his heart would say, this is what my people in all places, in all times, in all ages, in all economic situations, in all governmental spheres, in all of history, ought to be known for. And he would say, this is what I would hope that they would be known for. And many of you have heard it. It's actually found in this text right here, Matthew 28, verses 18 through 20. Some of the last words that Jesus spoke on earth to his disciples. It's the last passage. If you're not familiar with the Bible or with Matthew, Matthew is a guy who followed Jesus around, wrote down kind of like a biography of his life. He's writing an account and copying down what Jesus has been saying and putting that together. He's writing to a group of people called the Jewish people. And now Matthew 28 is the last kind of like picture of Jesus' life that Matthew records for us. And he is careful to pull up words of Jesus that are departing words to his disciples. And we're actually going to back up a little bit from verse 18 just so you get context, because where Jesus is talking to these disciples, he's talking at a point in his ministry where his ministry began. So the town is actually called Galilee. He's in the region of Galilee, and Galilee is where Jesus started his ministry. That's where he started it. In fact, some of you may be familiar with the Sermon on the Mount. That was in the Galilean ministry period. Jesus decided to kick off his ministry in this country region of Israel called Galilee. And he now is back with his disciples after his ministry has gone for 3 years. A whole lot has happened. And he's kind of like now saying, all right, where it started, we're back where it started. I've gathered you here back to the start, and we've been through a lot. And I want to tell you what I want you to do next. I want you to understand what I want you to be known for the rest of time. And this is what he says. We're going to start in verse 16 so you get a little bit of understanding. He says this, now the 11 disciples went to Galilee. You're like, I thought there were 12. Just kind of put a bookmark there, right? To the mountain which Jesus had directed them. And when they saw him, they worshiped him, but some doubted. Next verse. It says this, then Jesus came, and this is where we're going to spend our time mostly. Then Jesus came and said to them, all authority in heaven and earth has been given to me. Go, therefore, and make disciples of all nations, baptizing them in the name of the Father, and the name of the Son, and the Holy Spirit, teaching them to observe all that I have commanded you. And behold, I am with you always, even to the end of the age. Now, there's a lot there to unpack, and literally all we will be doing for the next 4 weeks is unpacking phrase by phrase that section of Scripture right there. Because we want to understand that. We want to see what's going on in Jesus' mind and his heart and what he's thinking, and see if we can rub that into our heart and our mind and allow him to speak through this to us. As yet just one more church in a whole line of host of churches throughout all eternity and time going, God, we want to be known for what you're known for. What do we do? Talking about this passage, some of you may be familiar with it. If you didn't grow up in church, this passage is often called the Great Commission. Now, that word Great Commission is not found in the Bible anywhere. That's the title that biblical scholars have given to it. It doesn't mean that it's not biblical, because it's all throughout Scripture. But we actually people think that term originated in the 17th century. In fact, some people think this guy in Germany, I wrote down his name because I knew I'd forget it. His name is Baron von Wells. He may or may not have been the guy to first quote that or coin that phrase Great Commission. It's something that is stuck. And about it, various people throughout history and church history have said some pretty important things about it. I brought some quotes with me. It says this, the work of the church is not survival. She exists to fulfill the Great Commission. There was a missionary named Brother Andrew that was That was his name. He was a missionary to Eastern Asia. Another one says this, if the Great Commission is true, our plans are not too big, they are too small. I thought it was pretty interesting if someone would say that about it. That's how much emphasis he's putting on this text. Someone else wrote this, it's just stunning to watch churches struggle to get mission statements when there it is. They should simply do what it says, right? Dallas Willard. Easy to say, also difficult to do. It's interesting, when you take a look at church history, this idea of the Great Commission has kind of like grown and also shrunk and grown and shrunk over time in emphasis. Recently, a guy named George Barna put together a study when he talks about the Great Commission in our culture and in America. This is what he came up with and what he found. These are actual statistics. They did a survey. Here's what it was. They surveyed churchgoers, not Americans, churchgoers. Do you attend church regularly? Yes. Have you heard of? Okay, low bar. Not what is. Have you heard of the Great Commission? Okay? No. 51%. No. Never heard of it. 6%. I'm not sure. 17. Yes, and it means. 25. Yes, but I can't recall the exact meaning. It's fascinating. If these are the words of Jesus to his disciples before he left them, at the end of 3 years of ministry in which a lot, and by a lot, I mean a lot went down, right? It might be beneficial to us and to churchgoers to know what it says and be known for it. Here's kind of what our series is built on. It's this, that it's entirely possible that the Great Commission has been greatly forgotten. Greatly forgotten. Could it be that we're not what we ought to be known for because we don't know what we ought to be doing? Or we've forgotten it. See, it's so important that we get this right. Because Jesus didn't come to them and say, hey guys, it's been great. Do whatever you want. He came to them and he said, here's what I want you to do. Here's what I would hope that years from now. And here's what I would desire. And here's actually more than hope. Here's what I am going to do through you so that my people might be known for that. Now, all we're doing today is the intro, okay? That doesn't mean that what we're doing is not important. But, again, we're going to walk verse by verse through this. But all I want to get you to see today, and the only question that we're asking today is this question: what if we forget what we're for? Why is this so important? What if we forget what we're for? And I want to show you, it's actually all kind of packed into this little statement that many of us read, we just run past. But it's important. If we're going to understand the Great Commission, we have to understand this little tiny phrase. And you're going to read it, and you're going to be like, that's it? I mean, like, yeah, that's it. Like, I can't see a lot there. And you're right. You might be like, what? All right, let's see what you do with this, okay? But I promise you, in this little phrase, leading up to it, provides a whole lot of context on why we need to understand in 2023 what we're for. Here's the phrase. This is it right here. This is it. Then Jesus came and said to them. Say, really? Yeah. Because in this text is the importance of understanding that we have to remember what it is we're for. When we forget what we're for, here's what we see. When we forget what we're for, I forgot what the first one is. Yep, there it is. We live with the wrong reference point. We live with the wrong reference point. See, well, what do you mean? Well, when Jesus comes to his disciples, Matthew writes, and here's what he says. Then Jesus came. Like, then. Well, what do you mean, then? Like, is this just like, okay, another thing is happening? It's like, no. You have to understand that what Jesus is saying to his disciples is actually taking place after something really big. After perhaps one of the largest events, not even perhaps, the largest event in Jesus' ministry. So when Matthew says, then Jesus came to them and said, he's not just simply saying, oh, by the way, it was another Wednesday and Jesus got coffee and stopped by and said, hey guys, I was thinking, this is like placed specifically after an important event. And we see that in Matthew chapter 28, verses 5 through 7. And you've almost all heard of it, I guarantee, because we talk about it every Easter. Here's what happened right before this conversation. Now, after the Sabbath, toward the dawn of the first day of the week, Mary Magdalene and the other Mary went to see the tomb. And behold, there was a great earthquake, for an angel of the Lord descended from heaven and came and rolled back the stone and sat on it. That doesn't happen every day, right? His appearance was like lightning and his clothing white as snow. And for fear of him, the guards trembled and became like dead men. Matthew continues. He says, but the angel said to the woman, do not be afraid, for I know that you seek Jesus who was crucified. Jesus who was crucified. He is not here. Why? For he has risen, what? As he said. He told us he was going to do this, right? Come see the place where he was, because he's not here. He used to be laying here dead. Now he's not. Then go quickly, tell his disciples that he is risen from the dead, and behold, he is going before you to where? Galilee. There you will see him as I have told you. Where did we pick up? Then Jesus came to his disciples and said, where? At Galilee. See? The message to the women at the tomb was Jesus is alive. He's got some important stuff to tell you. Get the disciples and head to Galilee. Now, what comes next is pretty important, right? The resurrection is the event from which the people of God live all of their life. It is the driving force behind everything we do. The fact that God became man, died for us, and rose from the dead is the single thing that we as followers of Jesus are to respond to. Not just at Easter, right? But every day. It is literally a point of reference for which followers of Jesus live off of, right? We look at it and we say, if that happened, I live differently. If that happened, it dictates how I live today. It changes some things about 2023, right? We don't look at 23 in light of 22 or in 21, or we definitely don't use 20, right? We don't do that. We look at it and go, Jesus is not here. He is risen as he said, and I live in 2023. How do I live in 2023? That's a great question. The point of reference for the followers of Jesus has been, always will be, Jesus is alive. Right? Now this is important because if you have the wrong point of reference, things get weird. They do. Some of you might be familiar with this picture of what this, anyone know what this is? It's not just a telescope, it's a Hubble telescope, right? Hubble telescope has been famous for the amount of images that it's given back to us. I have a couple here that honestly, on this screen and our resolution doesn't do justice, but you can go for hours online and take a look at galaxies and things that Hubble brought back. Something interesting happened when they launched Hubble into space. It didn't work. And the reason it didn't work is because on the assembly line, when the person was putting it together, who was responsible for taking one of these little tiny rods that holds the lens in place, well, he had the wrong reference point. He actually put it in upside down and backwards. So like millions of dollars, right? And it's not even his fault. They came out and said, listen, man, it's not even this dude's fault. We didn't really give him a frame of reference. But he was doing the best with what he had, and he flipped it around, and that actually caused caused the lens to be off by a mere fraction of millimeters. And what they found is it went to space. The pictures that Hubble came back with were really fuzzy. It was underwhelming. Like, hey, we're going to send this thing up. It's going to take pictures of far-off stars. They come back, and they're like, I don't know. What do you see here, right? I think that is, right? And then they realized it's broken because someone put it in with the wrong frame of reference. You understand? If people of God don't have the right frame of reference, if I, following Jesus, am not living off of the correct reference, if I have a wrong frame of reference, my vision of who God is and my vision of how that life is supposed to work is going to be fuzzy. It's not going to look correctly. It will not be clear. Speaking about this, Ed Stetzer talked about this upheaval that we recently have gone through as a country. Not just talking about the pandemic, but more than the pandemic, talking about this social upheaval. And he writes this about the church. He says there's three trends shaping the post-pandemic church. And his words, not mine, okay? So I'm not targeting anybody. This is his words. He's Ed Stetzer. He's a guy. He writes about the church. He says this. He says, huge numbers of people have moved from church to church for reasons only tangentially related to the pandemic. For example, some people left their church because the church wore masks. Others left churches because the church did not wear masks. They sorted themselves into churches that followed their view of masking. He refers to this, he calls it the big sort. He keeps going on, he continues. He says, some people left churches because they heard the name George Floyd. Others left because they did not hear his name. Some people left churches because Sunday after the U.S. presidential election, the pastor prayed for former Vice President Joe Biden. Others left churches because the pastor did not pray for the president. Biden. Now, I'm not bringing this up to point fingers or do any of that, okay? All right? I think we all understand where we've been as a country. But what I am pointing out is that perhaps, in the wake of all of this social upheaval, it might be important for us to understand what it is that we're known for. A friend of mine, he's a pastor, he's not famous, but he said this, and I thought it stuck. He said, man, today more and more Christians are being driven by ideology over theology, right? You can find him and thank him later, okay? Like, I don't know. But my fear isn't right. My concern is that when we ask the question, what are we known for? We might answer it with this stuff rather than that, right? If there's ever a time in the history of our people to be known for the words of Jesus to his disciples, it is today. It is today. Being known for that over whatever other reference we have is crucial. All the pandemic did was call our bluff. That's all it did. And we found out that our discipleship was really deficient. If anything, what we're called to was confused. And we, honestly, we didn't do so great in that little exercise. Like if that was a training, like I think, again, I could go on for hours, but as a pastor, I think the pandemic, America just kind of went through some training that the rest of the church has lived through for like thousands of years. And we freaked out, honestly. Honestly, we did. And we need to recapture the fact that the thing that we organize our life around is the resurrection of Jesus. Paul put it this way. He said this in Philippians 3:10 through 12. Just so you know, I'm not making this up. He says this. He says that I may know him, who? Jesus. And notice what? His words? No, the power of his resurrection, and may share in his sufferings, becoming like him in his death, that by any means possible I may attain the resurrection from the dead. It's a big deal to Paul, right? Why? It's how he lives. And then he goes, not that I've already obtained this, or I'm already perfect, but what? I press on in 2023. That's what I want to be known for. That's what he's saying. That's what I'm known for. You want to know what I'm known for? I'm known for not being perfect, but I am known for living out of the resurrection to one day seeing Jesus. You got to have the right reference. And the right reference isn't going to be given to you by somebody online or somebody in political power. It's going to be given to you, and it has been given to you in Jesus Christ coming back from the dead. That's how we live. If we forget what we're for, we live for the wrong reference. I think the second thing that we see is if we forget what we're for, not only do we live for the wrong reference, but we water down Jesus' words. We water it down. Notice, Jesus comes to them and he says this, then Jesus came and said. I think that phrase, Jesus came and said, is pretty important to us. Say, well, why? Because these are the words of Jesus after the resurrection. Resurrection's a big deal. Second to that is probably what he says next. Now, if you grew up in church, you read this and you're familiar with the Great Commission and you read it like that's all could always have ever said, right? And Jesus came to them, he said, oh yeah, all authority has been given to me, go and be my witnesses, baptizing, make disciples, I'm with you always, check, okay, got it. But Jesus didn't have to say that, right? He didn't have to say that. Jesus could have said, guys, I was dead, now I'm alive, I need you to invest in some property. And if we do this right, and you invest in some, and you find 5 people to invest in your property, and you find 5 people to invest in your property, and then they find 5 people to invest in theirs, and then 10, we could set up a pretty cushy system for ourselves. He could have said that. But he didn't. He didn't. Jesus isn't just talking. Jesus is answering a question. What happens next? What comes next? He's going, guys, this is the next thing that's coming. This is a directive, okay? This isn't just him going, oh, if you wanna. This is, I'm alive, and they're going, we read, some doubted, that really means hesitated. That if we're gonna put that into English, they'd be like, what? What? You died, I saw you die, now you're alive. What? And he opens his mouth and he says, here's the plan. Here's what's next. Which it's funny because as a pastor, people, when they find out you're a pastor, they start talking to you differently. But before, it's really interesting. It's great, right? But sometimes when they find out you're a pastor, people will ask me, and maybe you've been asked this question by your friends, I don't know. Hey, or maybe you've thought this. You ever wonder what Jesus would say today if he showed up to us? You ever wonder what he would say? If he saw Netflix, wow, why didn't I think of that? No, what would he say, right? What would Jesus, you ever thought, what would Jesus say if he, saw what was going on? Some of you are like, Jesus, really, what? What? Come on, what? Tell me. But what is going on? What would Jesus say? You know what? You don't have to wonder what he would say, because I'm fairly certain if he showed up, he would say, all authority has been given to me in heaven and earth. And he'd probably say, go and make disciples of all nations. I want you to baptize them in the name of the Father, Son, and Holy Spirit. Teach them to obey everything I've commanded you. And guess what? I'm with you always, even to the end of the age. I'm fairly certain he would say that. Which means we don't have to wonder what we're doing. We don't. We don't even have to formulate crazy plans. Thank the Lord. We have to take God at his word. And I think what happens is if we begin to read his words like all the other words in the world, they kind of just mix together and water down where that is in our heart and minds. You guys ever accidentally bought this juice? It's 5% juice. Literally. This is Snapple Apple. Juice drink. Notice, juice drink. That's the giveaway. Not juice. It's a juice drink. If you turn it over and take a look at it, you'll find 2 things. 1, it does not contain apple juice. It contains pear juice that's been flavored to apple. Sorry. 2, it's not even all juice. It's 95% sugar, high fructose corn syrup, and 5% juice. Now, when this is online, I am not angry at Snapple. I'm not trying to take them down or any of that, okay? I'm just saying, we all know, especially if you're parents, you start reading labels because you understand that just because it looks like juice doesn't mean it's all juice. It's really, 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 really watered down. Now, why does that matter? Well, because I think when it comes to our church and our life, it's entirely possible that when we look at Jesus, we would go, oh, it's totally fine that it contains just a hint of him. And we'll do that. And we'll label it Christian. Or we'll label it church. And we'll call it good. Because it's church. It's Christian. I wonder, with all of the words that are coming out, all of the stuff online, all the things that we read, the amount of hours that we listen to podcasts, all of the influencers that we listen to, everyone talking to us, I wonder, has the words of Christ just simply become part 5%, 6%, 10%, Christmas and Easter 20%, but the rest of the year, whatever? Like, have they become just part of what we live by and what we're known for? We call it, yeah, no, I'm good. But we would just say this is one among many. Now, before I get anybody pushing back, let me just push back, okay? I've bought stuff like this in college, right? To be fair, a couple other times in my life, I've bought stuff like this. You have too. Let's just be honest. You've bought fake stuff. You bought 5% juice before. Even on the road, I don't know, maybe you're really thirsty. Why do we buy it? Because if I'm to be honest, I like sugar. Not a problem. Don't mind it. And you know what? It's affordable. Really affordable. Because real juice, it's like $9. This stuff is $1.50, right? I mean, it may or may not be, I don't know. But yeah, right? Yeah, it's cheap. And by the way, what do we say? It's probably all the same anyway. Tastes the same. Tastes the same, it's cheaper, and I like it. Right? And it's the same for me. This is a people thing, not a pastor thing, just a people thing. Could it be that we would be tempted, if we forget what we're for, tempted to even forget what 100% juice tastes like? What the real thing is. Writing about this, George Barna wrote this. He says, proclaiming Christians look virtually identical to non-Christians in our society every day. The church is becoming more like the world it is allegedly seeks to change. Leslie Newbegin, he was a missionary to India, came back to Great Britain, and he wrote this. He said, Christians have in general failed to realize how radical is the contradiction between the Christian vision and the assumptions of our culture. We allow ourselves to be deceived into thinking of the church as one of the many good causes which need our support. One of the many in the whole melu of everything. There was a time in my life where I was working for a different church. We were just trying to get it off the ground, and a business guy said, hey, I know you just had a kid. It's got to be a little bit crazy to work at home. Why don't you come and work in my office building? I'll give you an office. And I was like, man, that would be so great. I would really love that time, right? I would love to be able to have somewhere to go. And so I show up, and he had an awesome, it was like 1800s house, 1898 home, which he had totally renovated into a great office space. And so he's taken me past all of these offices, and it's like, that was a bedroom, that was a hall, that was a dining area, and they're all like separate offices. And I'm like, all right, that's a dining area, that's a bedroom, that's something else. What do I get, right? What is it? So I got a server closet that he cleaned out, and there was no windows or no light. But listen, I was thankful for it. But one of the things that he had at his office, which I thought was, I'd never encountered this before, was a ZoomX machine. Does anyone know what this is? I brought a picture. This is a machine that you literally just put whole oranges up at the top, and you watch. It goes from the orange down into the machine. The machine picks it up, slices it, and squeezes it into a cup that you put right there. And let me tell you what. He was like, this is mine, but it's ours. It's free. Drink all the orange juice you want. I got my money's worth from that server closet in orange juice that year. And it was really good. It was really good. But you could see it. You could see it go in. You could see it move. You could see it come down. You see it squeeze out of it. And after that, I'm like, man, there's no going back. There's no going back. Why? Because I've actually tasted the real thing. Let me ask you this. Could 2023 be the year that God goes, how about we stop dealing with percentages? How about we stop measuring 5%, 6%, 10%, Jesus, 25%? How about we just start drinking the real thing? Jesus, talking to his disciples before he went to the cross, he says this. He says, I am the vine, you are the branches. Whoever abides in me and I in him, it is he that bears much fruit. By this my Father is glorified, that you bear much fruit and so prove to be my disciples. What are we known for? See, it's important that we don't forget what we're for, because we'll live with the wrong reference and we will water down the words of Jesus. But I think this last one kind of hits home for me. It might for you as well. It's this, that we grow the gap between them and me. If we forget what we're for, we're going to grow the gap between them and me. What do you mean? Well, Jesus, right? Then Jesus came and said to what? To them. To them. Well, who's them? Well, we can go back and read, right? In Matthew 28, verse 16, we're told, now the 11 disciples, right? The 11 disciples. Remember, Judas betrayed Jesus, ended up taking his own life. He's not there. 11 guys. Now, if you didn't grow up in church, you're like, who are these 11 guys? Are they like the best teachers of the law? Nope. Are they like A students? Nope. Are these guys like the best of the best that God came to earth and picked? Nope. Well, tell me about these 11 guys. Well, some of them were fishermen, but they were like really great fishermen, right? No, they really weren't good at catching fish until Jesus showed up, right? Like, no. Okay, well, what else? One of them was a guy who betrayed his countrymen and was a tax collector, and everybody hated him. Okay, who's that guy? Well, the book's named after him. All right, well, who else? Well, there's Simon. He was an assassin and wanted to overthrow Rome. He was a zealot. God picked these people, right? You're like, who made this list, right? Because what we tend to do, right, is we read this and go, well, that was them. And they saw Jesus. And they heard Jesus' voice. But I'm me. We don't even dress the same. We don't look the same. Surely, those are the apostles. Those are the ones, they did miracles. Jesus did miracles through them. I'm just like a 20-year-old who's getting out of college. I'm a mom with 3 kids. Like, I'm just a business person. I drive a car that I'm almost getting paid off. Jesus. Like, that was them. And in fact, for a long time, people thought like, oh, God was only talking to them. But we can see, not only just because the word disciple is used, a disciple is just a follower of Jesus, but we can see when Jesus gives the directive that he's talking about more than just them. In fact, he says this, he says, then Jesus came and said to them, notice, here's what I want you to do. I want you to go where? To all nations. All the 11 guys are going, we're going to need more people than these 11, right? All nations. I'm pretty sure there's more than 11 nations. Can you name more than 11 nations, Matthew? I think so. Okay, well, where are we going to get everybody else? And then he goes, by the way, I am with you always to the end of the age. In other words, this is going to go on for a really long time. Yes, in the back. Jesus, how long are we going to live? Guys, I hate to tell you, some of you are going to get killed real quick. Yes, you. So then how to the end of the age? Oh, well, there will be other people. Other people. What are they going to do? They're going to do what you're going to do. You see, if we forget what we're for, here's basically what we're doing. We're doing like, oh, that was Jesus' people. That was them. They were powerful. They knew him. They saw him. I'm just me. It's just 2023. That was 6 AD, 30 AD, 33, 70 AD. This is 2023. We got computers and cars and planes, right? But Jesus would look at you and he would look at me and he goes, hey, you're them. That's you. Talking about this, D.A. Carson said, Jesus' instructions to make disciples is not just a specific word to the apostles gathered around him at the time of his final resurrection appearance. It's like this, especially in Atlanta. You guys know this. It's like this. It's like this bottle right here. This is a Coke bottle throughout the ages. The outside has changed. Look at that. I think 1899, pretty cool. Not bad. 2007, we got aluminum, right? There's plastic in there. It's changed. The materials changed. The styles changed. The labels kind of changed. But you know what hasn't changed? What hasn't changed? The recipe of what's in it. Right? You understand that the same power that raised Jesus from the dead, if you're a follower of him, lives in you. Same power that's lived in them lives in you. Paul put it this way. He says, Colossians 1:27, to them God chose to make known how great among the Gentiles are the riches of the glory of the mystery, which is, this is what he's saying to a church, Christ in you. What is that? That's the hope of glory. What's the hope of eternity? Where we're going to see what God has done. It's God in us, moving through us. That's phenomenal. And I think we if we don't know what we're for, we sit back and we go, I'm not them. My family's not perfect. God knows that, by the way. Like 2022 wasn't great. He also knows that. Kathy Keller, author, she says this about us, people who would say, I follow Jesus today. She says, no other message has either that dynamic or that joy that Jesus lived a perfect life and exchanged it with us in order to die the death our sin required, and that he rose and is making all things new. That message changes everything, hearts, minds, lives, communities, and it is our privilege to take it to the world. It is. If we forget what we're for, we forget that. Because just to be honest, right, and this is probably the elephant in the room. Just to be honest, when the gospel, the good news of Jesus, when we actually look at that good news, we have to be honest with the bad news first. And the bad news is that all of us were not known for what Jesus is talking about here for most of our lives. That humanity has not been known for going and making disciples. You know what we were known for? Paul put it this way in Ephesians chapter 2, 1-5. He says this, and you were dead in your trespasses and sins, which you once walked, following the course of this world. But God, being rich in mercy, because of the great love with which he loved us, even when we, you, me, were dead in our trespasses, what did God do? He made us, notice the word, alive together with Christ. And that same Jesus, who is alive, who rose from the dead, looked at his followers, and you and me, if you know him, who said, I know that you've been known for fishing. I know that you've been known for denying me. I know that you've been known for being cynical. I know that you've been known for the sinful life that you have lived. But I am making you alive. I have made you alive with me. And the invitation is this, that you might no longer be known for what you were, but that collectively you might be known for me and my life, if you're willing. And I wonder, what would it look like for you? As the band's about to come out, I'm just wondering, what would it look like for you this year? If you honestly ask the question, as a family, what are we known for? As a couple, what are we known for? As a company, what are we known for? As a follower of Jesus, what am I known for? Now, what would it look like if in 2023, just imagine what would happen if churches across America said, Forget all the other stuff. We want to be known for Jesus and his directive to his people after he rose again. Imagine what would change. What would change about the way that you use social media? What would change about how you talk to your kids? What would change about how you relate to your neighbor? It's a radical difference, isn't it? That's the question we're asking. I think that's the challenge for you and me. If you dare to ask it. So again, it's just the intro this morning. My challenge to you is, if you're willing, for the next 5 weeks, would you walk with us as a church as we ask this question of ourselves? And more than we, because what happens in the we happens in me first, would you be willing to do that with us? In Portugal, there is a town called Bethlehem, only they don't call it Bethlehem, it's called Belém. And in it, there's a monastery. I got a picture right here. That's what it looks for, famous monastery. And at this monastery, they would starch nuns' habits. A habit would be a hat you wore. Starch was a process they would use egg whites to do that back in the day, in the 1800s and 1700s. And they ended up, if you've ever used egg whites, you have an egg yolk. And so they didn't know what to do with this egg yolk, so they began to make these pastries with it. Well, today, if you go to Belém, you will find out something very interesting. That this monastery in the middle of the 1800s closed down, and you can go and you can tour it, and you can look at the architecture, but it doesn't have a line. This little tiny shop over there on the right, that's a pastry shop. And do you know what they make at that pastry shop? They make these egg tarts right here. And you can't get them. Can't get them. Because the monks, when the monastery closed, had to survive somehow. They ended up starting making this. They were invented there. They've always been there. And the line is always out the door. And it's not really even a line. They're just kind of crowded around, right? My wife and I were over there at some point in time. We had the chance to go through. I've eaten these, and it's worth the wait. It's pretty good. It's real good. It's great. You can find some stuff online to try to make it. It's not the same. It's not. In Belém, people are crowding to this shop, waiting for hours, throwing money at them for these egg tarts for the past 100 years. It's not the architecture. It's the tarts. Why? Because the recipe's the same. Hasn't changed. People eat them and it's good, and they enjoy it, and they savor it, and their palate is changed forever, and they tell somebody else. And then you gotta go. Because the monastery, no. Skip the architecture. Go to that little shop and eat the little egg tarts. Listen, we are not gonna be known for architecture. Not this church. Look at our buildings, right? It's great. I'm glad they're there. Could it be that we could be known for the great good news of Jesus? That we enjoy ourselves, but not just enjoy ourselves. Tell other people. That's our prayer. So would you join me in asking Jesus for that? Father, we do ask you, honestly, not because it's just what we're going through as a church, but because we genuinely understand that you live today. We ask that you would make us known not for our mission statements or our buildings or our architecture, Lord. Would you make us known for something that we didn't even make? You did. Would you make us known for the good news of Jesus? For the fact that you're making people dead who were dead come alive. Lord, we really ask that for this people, that we might be alive this year in you, living as a response to your resurrection, taking 100% of your word as your word, and understanding that we're part of this process. God, use us for your glory.